Imagine the North Sea before the world catches fire, a gray expanse of water stretching toward a horizon where storms gather like omens, and beneath those clouds, four shapes move with the quiet certainty of predators. They are massive, armored, and unnervingly graceful. Their hulls cut through the waves as if the ocean offers no resistance. Their guns point toward the sky like the pillars of some forgotten temple. In this alternate world, by the autumn of 1939, Germany has done the impossible. Where history knows only 2 Bismarck-class battleships, here there are 4, Bismarck, Tirpitz, and 2 sisters that history never witnessed, Sachsen and Württemberg. 4 shadows of steel built under the eyes of a Europe that still wants to believe peace is possible. That is where our story begins. Not with a battle, not with a declaration of war, but with a question. What happens when a nation, preparing for a war it claims not to want, secretly constructs the most powerful battleship squadron on Earth? To understand that question, we have to slow down. We have to return to the early 1930s, to shipyards shrouded in secrecy, and to a Germany still pretending to follow the rules of the Treaty of Versailles. On paper, they are allowed no battleships of this scale. But the treaty is already a monument to broken promises, and Berlin knows it. By 1934, plans begin circulating through the Naval High Command. Germany will accelerate its rearmament not through numbers, but through intimidation. The Reich cannot match the Royal Navy ship for ship. It cannot outbuild Britain, cannot outspend it, cannot hope to dominate the seas through quantity, but through quality. Perhaps the odds shift. So the keel of the first Bismarck is laid earlier than in our timeline. And when it becomes clear that the design will exceed every battleship afloat, the decision is made quietly, almost timidly. Build more. 1 Bismarck is a statement. 4 Bismarcks are a threat. The industrial strain is immense. Workers labor in shifts that seem endless. Steel flows into shipyards at a rate that startles even the officials who approve the project. Other vessels are delayed. Submarine production slows. Smaller ships are pushed aside. But Berlin has made its choice. These 4 giants will be the centerpiece of its future fleet. As 1938 rolls into 1939, the impossible takes shape. The hulls rise from their dry docks. Their armor belts thicken into walls of steel. Their guns are hoisted into place like the limbs of titans. And by the summer before the war, all 4 stand ready. Not fully tested, not fully trained, but complete enough to be dangerous. This moment, more than anything else, changes the logic of Europe. Because as Britain watches Germany march into Czechoslovakia, then Poland, it is not just the army that concerns them. It is not just the Luftwaffe or the U-boat threat. It is the knowledge that 4 Bismarck-class battleships are now steaming in the Baltic, waiting for orders. In the real timeline, German naval strategy was defined by caution. With only 2 giants, the loss of even one would be a national humiliation. But here, risk feels different. If Germany can afford to lose 1, perhaps even 2, what does that do to the confidence of a navy preparing for war? When war breaks out in September, the 4 battleships move like ghosts. They do not challenge the Royal Navy immediately. They do not seek glory. Instead, they drill relentlessly in the Baltic while smaller German ships draw Allied attention elsewhere. Britain sends reconnaissance planes. Most return with only vague shadows on the water. 4 Bismarcks are hard to hide, but not impossible to confuse, and through this uneasy calm, tension spreads across Europe. The Royal Navy, the most powerful fleet the world has ever seen, now faces something it has not confronted in over a century. A rival battle squadron that could, in the right conditions, match it, perhaps even defeat parts of it. Admirals in London begin to speak in quieter voices. They ask new questions. What if the Germans attempt a breakout not with 1 battleship, but with 4? What if they strike the Atlantic convoys from multiple directions? What if the home fleet cannot intercept all of them? For the first time since the days of Napoleon, Britain feels the faint chill of uncertainty at sea, and for Germany that uncertainty is the point. The 4 Bismarcks are not meant to win the war outright. They are meant to unbalance it, to force Britain into hesitation, to widen the cracks in Allied strategy until something breaks. In the distance, the 4 great hulls continue their silent maneuvers. The storm over the North Sea grows darker, and the world edges closer to a moment that will redefine the early war. The calm is ending, the storm is waiting, and the 4 Bismarcks, engines rumbling deep within their armored bellies, are already turning toward the open ocean. The storm breaks in the early spring of 1941, not with a declaration, not with a grand strategy broadcast across Europe, but with something far quieter. A coded message leaves Wilhelmshaven and travels across the radio waves, slipping beneath the ears of Allied listeners. It contains just 4 words, but those words are enough to change the rhythm of the North Atlantic. Breakout. All 4 units. At dawn the next morning, the Bismarck-class squadron moves. not as a scattered line of steel, but as a single formation prow to prow, their engines throbbing like a distant heartbeat across the gray water. Bismarck leads, Tirpitz follows. Behind them, the two sisters, Sachsen and Württemberg, churn the sea into white rolling thunder. Their crews feel the weight of history pressing down on them. Some feel fear, others feel pride. All know that this moment, this departure, may mark the last quiet breath Germany takes before the Atlantic erupts. The plan is audacious, almost reckless. The 4 battleships will split once they reach the open ocean. They will move like wolves circling a herd, hunting convoys from different directions. British intelligence might track 1, it might track 2, but 4, the pressure would be overwhelming. Somewhere, something would slip through the cracks. The home fleet scrambles the moment reports begin filtering in. A Norwegian radar station catches a glimpse of something enormous moving along the coast. A patrol aircraft spots wakes too large to belong to cruisers. Signals intercept stations detect bursts of encrypted communication unlike anything Germany has sent before. In London, a sense of dread settles over the Admiralty. This is not the war they prepared for. This is a new kind of threat, a concentrated force of power that seems to defy the logic of the naval treaties Britain once believed in. The Royal Navy deploys everything it can. Hood, Prince of Wales, King George V, repulse. Dozens of cruisers, destroyers, and escort groups fan out across the ocean like a desperate net, knowing that the slightest gap could mean catastrophe for the convoys sustaining Britain's lifeline. The rhythm of the war quickens. Messages fly across the Atlantic. Carrier groups adjust their routes. Convoys are rerouted so hastily that some steam hundreds of miles off course. A storm that might have been ignored becomes a shield for dozens of merchantmen fleeing toward Iceland. And through this chaos, the 4 German battleships advance. When they reach the Norwegian Sea, the squadron turns west and divides exactly as planned. Bismarck and Tirpitz veer north toward the Arctic routes. Sachsen and Württemberg slip south into the open Atlantic, aiming for the deep water lanes that feed Britain from Canada and the United States. The hunt begins. For a brief moment, Germany believes its gamble will succeed. A convoy is sighted by Sachsen. Merchantmen race to change course. A British escort group attempts to intervene but is forced to withdraw when Württemberg appears from the fog like a living mountain of steel. Reports reach London and panic churns beneath the surface of every conversation. If just one of these battleships breaks into the Atlantic unopposed, Britain could face a disaster of unimaginable scale. If 2 break through, the nightmare doubles. But 4 would be enough to shake the foundations of an empire. Then, like lightning striking a calm sea, everything changes. A Catalina patrol aircraft, flying dangerously low through a snowstorm north of Iceland, emerges into sudden clarity. Below it, cutting the water at full speed, are 2 vast silhouettes, Bismarck and Tirpitz. The plane circles once, barely avoiding the rising wall of cloud, and sends an emergency transmission before fading into the blizzard. The Admiralty receives the message. 2 German battleships heading toward the Arctic convoys. No mention of the other 2 sisters. In that moment, the British High Command faces a dilemma that feels almost paralyzing. Do they commit their most powerful ships north, risking a trap, or do they divide their forces and chase shadows across the Atlantic? They choose the only option that seems rational. They go north. Admiral Lancelot Holland, commanding Hood and Prince of Wales, receives the order. His task is simple in words and terrifying in practice. Intercept Bismarck and Tirpitz before they break into the convoy lanes. At sea, the weather worsens. Fog thickens. Waves rise like moving cliffs. Above the storm, the Royal Navy races forward, following the last known position of the German squadron. Below the clouds, Bismarck and Tirpitz continue to advance, unaware that their presence has already reshaped British strategy. They do not know that Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, is coming for them. They do not know that the next hours will define the course of the entire Atlantic War. Somewhere to the south, Sachsen and Württemberg slip deeper into the Atlantic night, unseen, untracked, and increasingly dangerous. The ocean stretches between these forces like a battlefield waiting to be ignited. The pace quickens, the storm tightens, and the 4 Bismarcks are now poised to trigger the most desperate naval chase Britain has ever fought. The sea feels different in the early hours before dawn. It is heavier, darker, almost expectant. Waves break against the bows of Hood and Prince of Wales as the 2 British ships push through the North Atlantic storm, their hulls trembling under the strain. Rain lashes the decks, wind howls through rigging. Every man aboard knows what waits somewhere ahead. 2 of the most powerful battleships ever built. Holland stands on the bridge of Hood, staring into a wall of mist that seems to swallow the horizon. He knows his orders, he knows the risks, but he also knows the history that anchors his ship's name. Hood has never turned away from a fight, and now, with rumors that 2 additional German battleships are loose in the southern Atlantic, this interception has become something much larger than a tactical engagement. It has become a race against disaster. At first light, the sea softens. The clouds lift just enough to reveal a gray, restless expanse. Spotters scan the horizon, nothing. Minutes pass in slow drips, then something. A distant shadow, low against the water, then another, 2 shapes, 2 giants, Bismarck and Tirpitz. Holland's pulse steadies. He gives the order to turn toward the enemy. Aboard Bismarck, lookouts shout to the bridge. The silhouettes rising through the pale morning haze are unmistakable. Hood is here, and she is not alone. The ocean holds its breath as the distance between the fleets narrows. This is not the duel history remembers. It is something far more terrible, a confrontation of equals multiplied. Every ship begins maneuvering, adjusting course to bring guns to bear. Water fountains around their bows as they angle into the wind. And then, in the space of a heartbeat, the world erupts. Hood fires first. A flash of flame. A rolling thunder that ripples across the wet air. Shells arc like molten stars, carrying Britain's defiance across 7 miles of open sea. Tirpitz fires next. Her guns roar with a depth and force that rattles bulkheads. The concussion echoes across Bismarck's armored plates. The sky fills with the intersecting arcs of steel. For a moment the air itself seems to tremble. Prince of Wales joins in, her salvos sharp and disciplined, like a hammer striking an anvil. Bismarck answers with a broadside that lights the horizon. And in that moment, time slows. Every officer feels it. Every sailor senses it. The battle becomes a dance of instinct and reflex, each ship weaving between the limits of possibility. Shells crash into the sea, throwing walls of water skyward. Decks shudder under near misses. Lookouts cling to their posts as wind and rain blend into smoke and shock. Aboard Hood, a shell from Tirpitz lands close to the stern. The explosion throws a cascade of water across the deck and rocks the ship violently. But Hood presses on, pushing closer, trying to bring her heavier secondary batteries into range. Aboard Bismarck, an armor-piercing round from Prince of Wales slams into the forward superstructure, tearing through plating and sending fragments slicing across the navigating bridge. Crews scramble to restore communications, shouting through smoke as alarms ring. Both sides understand the stakes. If Hood falls, British morale shatters. If Bismarck or Tirpitz is crippled, Germany's entire strategy collapses. The next minutes decide everything. Tirpitz adjusts her aim. Her gunnery crew works with mechanical precision, bracing for recoil. The guns fire, a broadside aimed not at Hood's bow, but near her vulnerable midsection. Holland sees the flash. He tries to turn. It is too late. The shells strike with catastrophic force. One punches through the thin upper deck and detonates deep inside. Fire erupts outward in a torrent of smoke and flame. Hood shudders, slowing. Another shell follows, and then another. There is no single moment of silence. There is instead a rising, terrible groan, the sound of a ship in mortal agony. A sheet of fire climbs Hood's interior. A shockwave tears through compartments. And then, with brutal suddenness, Hood breaks apart. A pillar of flame shoots skyward. The great ship splits open, swallowed by the sea in less than 3 minutes. Aboard Prince of Wales, the crew watches in horror. Hood is gone. The pride of the fleet has vanished into smoke and ocean spray. Silence sweeps across both sides. Even the German gunners falter for a brief moment, stunned by the speed of the destruction. But the battle is not over. Prince of Wales keeps fighting, her guns pounding against the storm, her crew refusing to yield. Bismarck turns her focus toward the British ship, but this time the rhythm of the battle feels different. The loss of Hood has not broken the British resolve, it has hardened it. Prince of Wales lands a critical hit. A shell pierces Bismarck's bow, rupturing a fuel tank. Oil spills. Pumps fail to contain it. The mighty ship slows. Tirpitz swings to protect her sister, forcing Prince of Wales to turn away. The British ship retreats into the fog, battered but unbroken. And as the smoke drifts across the Atlantic, a new realization emerges on both sides. The Germans have won this battle, but not the war. They have sunk Hood. They have damaged Prince of Wales. But Bismarck herself is wounded, losing fuel, unable to continue her mission. And somewhere far to the south, Zoxen and Württemberg continue their breakout, unaware that the fate of the Northern Squadron has just changed the course of the campaign. The climax has come. The consequences are only beginning. The Atlantic does not forgive weakness, and it never hides damage for long. As Bismarck limps westward, oil trailing in a dark ribbon behind her, the German High Command begins to understand the scale of what has happened. Hood has been destroyed, yes, a devastating blow to British pride. But Bismarck, the pride of their own navy, is now wounded in a way that no victory can conceal. She cannot continue the hunt. She cannot outrun pursuit. She cannot even return home without risking everything. Tirpitz circles her sister like a guardian, pacing every mile of ocean with the caution of a hunter who suddenly senses he might have become the prey. Her crew watches the spreading oil slick with a growing dread. They know what it means. They know the British will smell blood. Far to the south, Zoxon and Württemberg carve their own paths across the Atlantic. They have not yet encountered a convoy. They have not fired a single shot. But their presence alone stretches British nerves to the breaking point. Convoys scatter. Escorts burn precious fuel, racing across the sea in search of shadows that may not even be there. The illusion of power is doing almost as much damage as the ships themselves. And then the illusions begin to crumble. The Admiralty receives a transmission from Prince of Wales, battered but alive. Bismarck is damaged, badly. Her speed is falling. Her fuel is leaking into the North Atlantic. In that moment, the British war effort pivots. What began as a desperate chase becomes something colder, sharper, and fueled by grief. The loss of Hood has turned the entire Royal Navy into a single, focused blade. The order spreads through the fleet. Find Bismarck. Find her before she disappears into the fog. Find her before she reaches the safety of occupied France, and destroy her. From Iceland to Gibraltar, the search begins. Cruisers sweep the waves in long arcs. Carrier aircraft dive through the clouds, engines rattling in the bitter wind. Destroyers slice through swells, braving conditions that would have turned them back only days before. Every man in the Royal Navy knows why they are doing this. Hood is gone, and justice or vengeance, depending on who speaks it, demands an answer. But the ocean continues its old tricks. It folds the horizon. It reshapes shadows. It wraps Bismarck in the kind of storm that has hidden countless ships for centuries. For a moment, it seems as though the great battleship might vanish entirely, swallowed by distance and weather. Then, unexpectedly, fate intervenes. A British reconnaissance plane, forced low by ice and wind, spots something unusual, a smear of oil, a trail stretching for miles, and at the end of it, a black silhouette rising and falling in the gray swell. Bismarck. The message reaches the home fleet. It spreads through radio rooms and command centers, igniting hope and determination in equal measure. King George V and Rodney turn toward the coordinates at full speed. Dorsetshire and a dozen destroyers adjust course, forming a tightening ring around the wounded German ship. Night falls, the sea grows rough. But this time the storm belongs to the British. Bismarck prepares for her final stand. Her crew works in silence, the reality settling over them like a cold shroud. They will not reach France. They will not see the Baltic again. They will face the combined weight of the strongest navy on earth, with a ship already wounded, engines faltering, rudders stiff in the storm. Dawn breaks in muted colors, gray sky, gray sea, a horizon where shapes begin to emerge, British battleships, cruisers, destroyers, closing from every direction. Tirpitz is gone, forced to retreat north to avoid encirclement. Bismarck stands alone. The battle begins with overwhelming force. Shells from Rodney crash into her superstructure, tearing through armor already weakened by flooding and stress. King George V joins in, her guns delivering steady, suffocating punishment. Bismarck returns fire, but her aim falters, her damaged systems stutter, her salvos fall short or veer wide. It is a slow defeat, not a single fatal explosion, not a single dramatic rupture, but a drowning in fire and steel. One turret after another falls silent. Flames crawl across the decks, the hull lists. Men abandon their posts, not out of fear, but because there is nothing left to fight with. The sea grows quieter as the British guns cease fire. Bismarck drifts broken and burning. Dorsetshire moves closer and delivers the final torpedo strikes. The great ship rolls onto her side, pauses for a moment as though refusing to surrender, and then slips beneath the waves. The ocean closes over her. The smoke disperses, and the storm as quickly as it began fades. But our story does not end here. Zoxon and Württemberg, still loose in the Atlantic, receive the news days later. Their mission collapses instantly. Without Bismarck and Tirpitz to anchor the fleet, their breakout becomes meaningless, a gesture without support, a threat without momentum. They turn back, but the Atlantic has no sympathy for ships that flee without purpose. British forces eventually corner them one by one. One is spotted by carrier aircraft and driven toward waiting cruisers. The other is intercepted by a task force returning from the hunt. Neither sister accomplishes anything beyond stretching the war's early chaos. Germany's grand gamble, 4 Bismarcks before the war, ends not with a new balance of naval power, but with a painful lesson. Heightened ambition magnifies defeat. Strength without strategy becomes a weight too heavy to lift. And in war, even giants can drown. As the ocean returns to silence, one truth remains. The North Atlantic was never a battlefield of steel alone. It was a battlefield of will. And in that contest, Britain endures. Thank you for letting me tell you this story. If you want more journeys through alternate history, more moments suspended between what was and what might have been, I'd be honored to take you along for the next one.